Hey everyone, welcome in. Betsperts Golf here for our first look, the Valspar Championship coming off of a Monday playoff at the Players Championship. Congrats to Rory, another trophy early in the season before the Masters. Another track that I wouldn't necessarily think would be a Rory track per se, Ron, even though, Rory is one of the best players in the world. It doesn't really matter, but, less than driver at Pebble, win less than driver a bunch. Although we went 18 off, he took the driver out of the bag today on 18 when he didn't need to. But great start. We thought it could be a year for Rory, and he is cruising. What's going on, buddy? How was the Players?
Yeah, it's man, it was somewhat frustrating watching that because let me look at the top of the leaderboard, even Saturday, Sunday, just guys you just aren't expecting. And then like you said, Rory just, like you got to give it to him. He has really turned things around. He's winning on courses that he doesn't seemingly fit. I know heading into the Players, you want to be in really good ball striking form, and he was the best ball striker heading in there if you go back over the last 3 months just from the start of this year. So that probably should have been a key sign. But yeah, you see, Scotty scuffling, and then Xander's, still kind of trying to get back from his issues. And so it's kind of wide open right now for Rory to kind of, I'm not going to say he surpassed Scotty, but what he's doing is pretty impressive. And of course, with him, it's going to all come down to next month to see if he can really turn it around.
Yeah, and then we have obviously a couple of majors that set up very well for him with, the PGA, US Open. We're going back to Ireland for the Open Championship. So definitely feels like things are set up very well for him. And maybe it's, a little zig and zag. We're getting some wins on spots we wouldn't think he would. At the end of the day, though, we do so much around, course fit and golfer architects for certain, types of courses and what the demand is. When you get these elite guys, and Rory is that, although he does separate with the driver so much, they can obviously go and win anywhere. And he's proven that, right? And, finding ways to still take out driver maybe a little bit more than the average guy and be able to find edges wherever he can. So kudos to Rory. Kudos to JJ Spawn. And again, not immaculate ball striker consistently. A guy that models very well, typically, especially if you don't weigh putting very much, and put himself in position, and he was kind of nails on Sunday to even get himself there. Was sliding back a little bit, and that nice little finish for him to get himself into the playoff. This dude has really never competed in. He's a previous winner, right? Won Valero, but in terms of anything that like big events, he's not found himself here very often. You get himself here in an isolated 2-man playoff the day after. It was a tough ask. And then obviously pars the first, the 16th, first playoff hole. Rory, makes a birdie. You're swimming uphill, pretty quickly. And, obviously that came unraveled. So good for JJ Spawn. Put himself in position, and, it's a nice check for a guy like that. That's, not necessarily fighting for his card every year, but towards the back middle end, year after year, with the way things are shrinking now. That's a nice big second place check for a guy like that to take home. So that's the Players, man, right? Sawgrass brings the Bud Collies of the world into play, probably more so than any, major would, because, it's just ball striking well, positional golf. If you just kind of put it together for the week, 3-4 rounds and you're in the mix, where you could see these stars, Ludwig ejecting, Hovland, Homa, rough week for some guys. And we see that year after year at Sawgrass, and it is no different. It's a hard handicap week. It's a hard DFS player pool week. It's a tough one. Like all of it. It's just the most highly variable. And then you add the weather that we had, just things get pretty wonky. So more of that this week, Ron. Valspar, Innisbrook, Copperhead, Snake Pit, last of the Florida swing here. Some commonalities I think we feel throughout Florida golf, and wind again could very much be a factor in terms of whether that's a wave advantage, specifically how things kind of look. Obviously we're still, 3+ days out to get a little bit ahead of ourselves sometimes with this, but personally I'm slower than normal this week. I think I'm going to take my time coming off of vacation as well. So I didn't watch a lot of the Players. I want to digest some more data here, but I also think we can get in a spot where, wind, weather, waves are going to matter a ton. And, sometimes I'm too quick to fire at numbers, or, don't want to get the worst of the number. But I think, you can get the worst of the wave and you're kind of dead on arrival. So get us started. Talk to us about the course, what we should expect at the Valspar, or any thoughts on, weather or wave advantages and how we should need to approach the week.
Yeah, I haven't looked, really much at the weather yet. We kind of saw, even with Sawgrass, how things can change. Even at the last minute, there was a huge edge. Ended up being, those first couple of days, at the players. But I mean, as for the course itself, we're right just outside of Tampa in Florida here. I think this is, and even the players agree with this, is kind of one of the most underrated courses on tour. It's a very complete test of golf. Like, not, I'm not gonna go as far as saying it's a major course, but I mean, you literally have to play every club in your bag here. You have these narrow pine tree lined fairways. These are the fourth narrowest fairways on tour, only about 26 yards wide on average. It's kind of looks like more like a North Carolina course. You have rolling terrain, which you don't see a lot in Florida. You still have your typical Florida lakes kind of mixed in here and there. But yeah, proper positioning off the tee is paramount here. So you have tight dog legs. You have, I think, 6 holes with water danger, but definitely not as much water as we saw last week at Sawgrass. The rough is approaching 4 inches, so you're going to have kind of very similar to what you saw last week. Another thing about Innisbrook here is they have typically very difficult pin positions, and these greens are typically firm as well. So that's another thing that, why the course consistently plays over par. I think it's the 10th toughest overall annual course on tour. So yeah, I mean, this is for me where, you really want to be in the fairway. A lot of that, and we'll look at, kind of the driver usage here, but it's definitely one of the biggest less than driver courses. So again, everyone's kind of playing to a spot, and that's where, approach really comes in. Being able to control your ball around the firm greens. And I think around the green is going to be a little more important this week, especially from the thick rough. So yeah, it's just kind of looking at everything. For me, again, this is probably a week where, you want good putters, but I mean, at the same time, and even if you look at the past winners here, like last year is still just mind boggling to me how, Peter Malnati is just one of the worst ball strikers on the entire PGA Tour. I mean, he just goes in here and, he obviously beats Cam Young, who finished second again. But yeah, it's just, last year was a real head scratcher. But when you look at his numbers, I mean, Malnati, he was actually 16th in driving distance, which shows you that distance off the tee really means nothing here. And he was 49th in accuracy. And so it's one of those just weeks where, but if you go back, Sam Burns won twice here. Paul Casey is definitely a guy who fits this course, just elite ball striker. Yeah. So yeah, that's last year, I'm going to kind of, I'm going to stop trying to figure that one out. But yeah, you want a ball strikers here for sure. And just players with an overall around the, overall good game.
Yeah, I think great call out. You got to use every club in the bag. Using them off the tee. You have a weird distribution of holes here too, where we have a pretty long par 71. You have 5 par 3s, and they're all long. So this goes into kind of, and even when you're looking at an approach shot distribution too, in terms of where shots are coming from, you're seeing just a higher plurality of 175 plus, and that's pretty much like 190 plus, or where for the most part all these par 3s are. You can see here, 195 on the 4th hole. Continue to go down 235 on the 8th. It's a lot of club. 200 on the 13th, 215, 215. So like, long approach shots basically on these par 3s as well.
Yeah, these have the 3rd longest par 3s on tour. So I think every single one's over 190. Yep. So yeah, this is a definite week where, you have 53% of approaches coming from 175 plus yards. So it's really a middle to long iron test.
Yeah, but then you get this weird wonky set of par 4s that are short for the most part, shorter in terms of, where some of the typically where we see the tour going nowadays, kind of these par 4s and, the 400 to 450 range more so than not, which is kind of unique comparatively as well. So yeah, definitely a unique course to handicap. I agree with you. I think you have to, for all intents and purposes, throw last year out. It really doesn't make a ton of sense. It just seems like Malnati got real hot at the right time, and that's a big win for him. You look historically here, harder ball striking test. You just kind of have to have that, and even with the less than driver, we'll look here into the course metrics a little bit more. I was looking at a approach shot distribution before we get started. We'll back up here to off the tee first. You can see the driver usage about, anywhere between 15 to 20% almost less than tour average, which is wild. And then you still have, lower greens and reg and lower fairways hit than normal too, which is obviously a challenge off the tee. You have to keep yourself in position. You can see that through the good drive percentage being lower than normal as well. You mentioned too, this course is tight and does have the ability to play really firm and fast. So even some really good tee shots that are striped down the middle can roll out a little bit, with not a ton of rain here, outside of the last couple of days here. You look at the approach shot distribution as we were touching on here as well. You can see, over the course, if you flatten it out, pretty average to a tour event, but not as much here in the short irons. When you get into, the stuff here we were touching on, 175 to 200 plus, you're up about 5 to 6%. You start to get into some of like the 250 plus, 200 plus stuff. That's a little bit more than tour average as well. So, some of those longer irons into these forced layups. This is, a spot where ball strikers typically fare well. And then Molinari just got hotter than the sun last year. So, Taylor Moore, also another guy that historically is very inconsistent, but has these random spike weeks where he just, it looks like he's a top 10 player on tour. It's happened multiple times. So playing a little bit harder than the Sam Burns years. You can see some of the Casey years too, where you're getting into, 10 single digits and stuff like that. Part of that was the rough change. I think last year or the year before, they made some changes in terms of aprons around the green and how they handle that. And then overall rough being grown out as well after the back-to-back 17s from Burns, which is not typically how this has played over par in variations from like a full stroke over par to, maybe a quarter stroke over par. So be interested to see how it plays this year. But again, in general, harder than normal. You can see just Cam Young and Molinari were the only guys in double digits last year. So, definitely a trying test. Rounds in the 60s are going to be, putting yourself in a really, really good spot here. And you can just see the leaderboard. I mean, you got a leaderboard with Molinari, Phillips, Moore. That also has, Cam Young, or, Mac Hughes going to get it out there a little bit, but, Cam Young, Xander, it's kind of an interesting spot where it just feels like a really hard handicap week, in terms of finding the, prototypical golfer that fares well here. You're kind of all over the map. Again, look, Glover, Reavie, Seabass, like there's not a lot of distance here. So that can kind of brings people in terms of how are they ball striking and then can they separate themselves with the putter? And you can see that here with, a Molinari, Hughes, those guys. That's typically how they're, going to have those spike weeks. So very challenging week to handicap, in my opinion, because of what the course asks. And then now we have the, it looks like again, we're a little early. It looks like we might have a PM AM wave advantage in terms of the wind spiking. But again, we're, I'm always reluctant to talk about that on a Tuesday or Wednesday with how these things can change. I was on a golf trip last week. I thought for sure we were rained on Saturday. We didn't get touched with, a speck of anything. So these things should change all the time. So, but, take it with a grain of salt. Be careful. Definitely take a look at it this week before you lock stuff in, before you lock in one and dones, before you lock in your DFS player pools. Don't fall in love with guys today. Go through the data. We're going to do that as well through the rabbit hole. Kind of get a sense of maybe some guys you're looking at, and then wait till we see a little bit more information here as we get closer to the week or tee off on Thursday. Any other course nuggets, Ron, that you want to share with folks before we start looking at some data?
Yeah, like you said, par 3 scoring is definitely something I'm looking at this week. And those ranges I think are very important. And yeah, I will say this, just about the field. This is, I know we had, I haven't looked this morning, but I know Aaron Rye dropped out, but we have 13 of the top 25 in the world rankings here. So I think this might be, one of the stronger fields we've had recently. And, there you see those two names on the top there, guys who just, when are they going to win again? Do I dare bet them again this week? But I mean, they're both really good course fits.
Yeah, and both, obviously what we saw with JT over the weekend for a little bit there. Tommy played some good golf. Seeing at the top of the board, he said decent field between this, and I think this could be the last time we see a good chunk of these guys before the Masters. Maybe some guys will tee it up. Decent field maybe at Houston as well next week, which is another great test. Tommy, JT, Xander. And again, looking at FanDuel's odds shop, obviously on a Monday morning. Those three are separating themselves into a separate tier. Sam Burns, again, two-time winner here. Does not striking it super well right now, but 22. Corey Connors, getting it done. Again, keeping yourself in the mix. Ball striking wise, last week, 25. Sep there as well at 25. Lowry, Zalatoris, all there as well. Akshay, Tom Kim. Tom Kim struck it pretty well last week. Ball striking wise, it was nice to see because he 33 there. Speed at 35. Michael Kim continuing to grind every single week. Dude is doing everything he can to ensure he gets himself into the Masters. Good for him. He came back to the world a little bit last week, but obviously that's to be expected, and Sawgrass can bite you. Scott Smalley, Poston. We get down to Moore, Hovland, Glover, Clanton down here in the 50 range. So you can see start to drop off. And again, we're coming off of an event where we had last year a 300-1 winner. Don't feel bad about going down the board. It does invite a little bit more variance than normal. Cam Young was one of the top guys on the board last year. Came down to him and the guy at 300-1, 300-1 won. So don't feel that you have to chase, especially similar to last week where there's just a little bit more variance than what the weather can do here as well. But yeah, decent field, decent top of the board field here comparatively, considering we're on the back of, two signature events, major coming up, and maybe some guys wanting to get a different look than Florida golf if they've been sick of it, which would make sense.
Yeah, it also strikes me that if you look at this top group, like there's a lot of guys on here who not only do they fit the course well, but they play really well in tough conditions. And I mean, you see a guy like Zalatoris, Shane Lowry. I mean, these are guys who kind of thrive in these, events that finish, in that 10 under range, tougher tests of golf. And so, yeah, I think there's some value here. I know, even a guy like Xander sitting there at, I'm looking at some books, he's at 20-1, and that's real tempting.
Gosh.
I know we've seen him struggle, but like in a field with no Scotty, no Rory, how close is he,
Yeah. I mean, I thought, I was made mistakes last week for sure. I thought the Xander last week was just way too big of a number. He got inside the cut line and then just shipped it in on the weekend, did not do much of anything at all. Outside of, see himself through and finish his last 36. But yeah, I mean, this is an elite golfer and, he's trying to get back into form. I like what we saw at the end of Bay Hill, to be honest. And I thought most of his losses were short game related, which could be very, very noisy. It could be just literally one bad chip. It can, really destroy what looks like a, larger data set than it is in terms of around the green in particular. So yeah, I mean, Xander floating out to 20 again, some places is going to be really, really, really hard to avoid. But yeah, you make a good point. I mean, we like Zalatoris in spots like this, right? 8, 10, 12 versus, birdie fest. Same thing with Lowry. That makes a little bit more sense too, even for Corey Connors. You keep the ball in play, manage it off the tee. You don't really get yourself in any trouble and, find a few spots here and there to pick birdies away. So definitely an interesting top of the board. Not sure what we're going to do, but interested to look at some of the data here. Again, this is FanDuel, but shop around as you kind of do your work here on a Monday morning. All right, we are waiting for, obviously, we're just, an hour or so removed from the end of the Players Championship. We'll see how long it takes. We should have some data here very soon if we do not already. Go ahead and take a look, just see if this happens to have the players in yet, but that should be coming here into the rabbit hole shortly. Yep, still waiting on that, which makes sense. It just ended, so we'll have that here soon. But what do you want to look at, Ron? Difficult scoring conditions, I agree with. I think some of the course region stuff, of course, Florida golf, some of that stuff, and in California doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But looking at like how you perform in Florida, I think matters a little bit more because there's more similarities in terms of the course designs, layouts, and kind of what's asked of you. But I'll let you lead me here. What do we want to start with?
Yeah, I think for sure, looking at difficult conditions, for me, this is probably more of a comp course week instead of just looking at straight Florida, because I think there are a lot of comparisons to even courses like Colonial, Sedgefield. And so again, we don't have to show that now, but again, when you look at the course data page for Innisbrook, we have the comp courses listed right there. So all you have to do is just easily plug those in. to the rabbit hole, and you could kind of come up with your own rankings there as well. But you know, even if we want to build a quick one here, so but
Yeah.
I think for me, there's so many, like I said at the beginning, features of like North Carolina golf here too. So I'm going to take some of those other ones into account more than just Florida courses. But yeah, I think definitely scoring conditions. And even if you want to get some Florida stuff in there, you can do the Florida swing. We have for the event season, we have that as well. So different
Yep.
options. But I think overall for me, the main big one here is just difficult conditions.
Love it. Classified as difficult. We've had, like I said, varying years of, a quarter stroke over par, almost a full stroke over par. So we want to, would you include average, or you just want on the difficult side? Because, we could have years depending on, again, where we're at, if this is playing, I would say if it was playing a quarter stroke over par this year, I'd probably want to look at average and not pull that data out. But, would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for me, and I'm looking at the last 2 years, because when they increased the rough starting in 2023, so it was 3 inches, and like you said, they brought the rough closer to the greens, so they got rid of a lot of the apron areas. So we've seen a pretty big jump. Like in 2022, it played almost 3/4 of a stroke under par. But since they made those changes, like a full stroke in 23, half stroke last year. So yeah, you could, if you wanted to just eliminate all easy courses, definitely that's another way you could look at it. Personally, I'm keeping it on difficult just because I think the rough increases, have kind of shown the last 2 years that this is, probably going to continue to play difficult.
Yeah. Let's back out a little bit. We'll get difficult and very difficult scoring conditions over. Let's look at the last calendar year and see what we get for these guys. Probably a decent sample size, I think, or value. Yeah, about 40 rounds. Let's look here at rank. Let's look at average. So average strokes gained per round, difficult, very difficult scoring conditions last 12 months. And then we can look at some ball striking stuff. Xander Schauffele makes sense. Corey Connors, Tristan Lawrence, not a big sample. We see Tommy Fleetwood here as well. Some small sample stuff on Neil Shipley. Shout out to Horsey Sauce in the field. Ryan Gerard playing some solid golf when he pops up here. Luke Clanton, small sample as well. The Florida swing. Got the card now. You see Lowry, Willett, Scott, Sepp, Akshay. So really, if we just go in here and put a minimum round sample on for some of these guys, you're going to see pretty much most of the top of the board. So I think the point Ron was making at the top here. So you put the minimum round feature on, and it looks a little different. Xander, Colin. I'll do more to get these 8-round guys out. Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky week. I have notes on this from last few years too. This is just a head scratcher sometimes. Xander, Connors, Fleetwood, Clanton, Lowry, Scott, Sepp. A lot of the top of the board. And you get Jacob Bridgman, Akshay, Horschel, Zayden Hoot, Burns, difficult golf courses. Basically guys gaining, right around a stroke per round or last year on, around a 30 to 40 round sample on difficult golf courses. Ball striking wise is going to matter a ton here. Some new names that pop up in this data set would be Joel Damon, Kevin Yu, Keith Mitchell, Hovland. We're still going to be pulling. Again, the ball strike is still really good. I mean, the long irons for Hovland still really good. Just sometimes just embarrassingly bad on and around the green right now. And he seems like he is completely lost in the wilderness. Rico Hoy had some nice ball striking numbers. The players as well, Kurt Kitayama. And you see again, Connors, Lowry, Fleetwood, Clanton, Gim. Some of the names we saw when you just searched by just strokes gained total. So again, interesting way to start it there too. Damon in here again, can't putt, which makes sense. So kind of the top of the board there, which makes sense. That's where the guys separate when it gets harder. These guys are all good at golf. And guys can separate on difficult golf courses is kind of a tell into who are the best in the field.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, the next one, like we get into here, is off the tee less than driver. I think that's crucial this week. Just kind of seeing, whether you're looking at strokes gained total, off the tee in general. I think a course like this that really emphasizes, hitting to a spot. Everyone's kind of going to that same area. And yeah, you can, driver usage, I think it's around 53% here. So yeah.
Yeah, this is what's so interesting to me. I was looking at this morning. We're last couple of years right around 13-14% off the tee, less than driver usage. And then you look at the approach numbers, look at the greens and reg percentage. Like, it still doesn't matter. Like, guys are still missing fairways at a pretty sizable clip, even though they are laying up. Again, it speaks to long irons. It speaks to this difficult long set of par threes. So
Front
very unique
greens.
course. Yep. Very unique. So again, they're so narrow off the tee, these fairways. So we'll go ahead into filter by conditions. We'll look at off the tee club, less than driver. And let's take a look at some ball striking numbers in these scenarios. Show us who is still getting it done. You can look at greens and reg. So let's see. Look at ball striking, less than driver, last 12 months. Still getting a pretty good sample. Again, Damon, Shoffley, Lowry, Hoey, Straka, Kitayama, Gim, Tom Kim, Keith Mitchell. Again, some names that we saw there. Again, there's a Bud Cauley for you. That makes some sense. I'm going to go into approach specifically and take a look here. I want to see where maybe some greens and reg numbers are for some of these guys too. Again, less than driver, you get a layup. Who's still hitting some of these greens and reg? Because that's surprising to me. You just typically will see guys who are doing that on purpose to keep the ball in play, be able to control the spin. And they're still, say, failing, but difficult greens to hold. This course can get firm and fast. Small sample for Thor, same thing for Lanto, but significantly above average. See Joe Highsmith. There's a Shane Lowry, Fishburne, Straka, Fleetwood, Collie Kim, and Xander. So again, you're seeing some common threads here throughout. I think it's definitely interesting to see. I think these things are going to matter a ton this week. Because you got to few scoring opportunities. You want to keep yourself in play for those. That gets a little bit harder if you are trying to chip and scramble for par. So definitely want to find different ways to look at it. Again, think through it too, right? We're looking at off the tee club, less than driver. Yeah, I can look at some off the tee metrics. That matters too. We're really trying to think of how it pertains to the first two shots, really, right? Can you still put yourself in position on the second shot? So I don't want to look at it just through the lens of strokes gained off the tee. But you can see Sam Stevens, Joel Damon, Cam Young, Hovland, Hoey, Vegas, Xander, Mitchell, Gim, Highsmith are your top 10 there. And you just want to see good drive percentage there because we saw that was significantly lower. Again, finding yourself in position on 4s and 5s with your first two shots. Hovland, Thor, Sepp, Gim, Fleetwood, Fishburne, Putnam, Glover, Highsmith, Michael Kim. So again, some names we're saying over and over again so far.
Yeah, and if you for me, this is a week where I think distance from edge of the fairway always matters. Again, there's not as much trouble as far as water where you're gonna. So if you're 5 yards off the fairway, if you're 10 yards, maybe not as much. It was interesting if you looking on the course stats page, the distance from edge of the fairway average is like 5. I think it's around 5 wider than average here from what I remember looking yesterday. So again, what that kind of speaks to though is because these fairways are so narrow, like when you miss, it's going to be a little bit wider because of how kind of the radius is much less here. So I just thought that was interesting as well. But obviously, like you said, everyone's kind of clubbing down, everyone's kind of hitting to the same spot. It's why it's so difficult to gain strokes off the tee here. And so I do agree with you. I think even some like good drive percentage. Are you able to find the green on your second shot, no matter where your tee shot ends up? I also think it's very interesting this week to kind of look at, I know Taylor Moore made the comment when he won that for him, it was all about just hitting the fairway and then hitting the green. So this may be a week where maybe greens and reg maybe takes on a little more value. And so I even think looking at greens and reg percentage from the rough, because we have all this rough data and just kind of seeing, what guys, who has that, ability, who've shown the ability to kind of hit greens when they're not in the fairway. So I think that's something I'm probably going to build into my models this week as well. Maybe a little bit more stuff, from the rough on approach.
I like it. Let's look at this here. We'll go to rough approach proximity and just get a sense of using some stuff there. We can also go and show it a different way through the filtering and look at that as well. But you see rough, greens, and reg. Last 12 months, it's a big sample with these guys, but we'll go into the average. See here. Again, it's these things are tricky because obviously, ideally, we're playing from the fairway. But you saw even with the clubbing down, guys are still in the fairway less frequently than normal. Some smaller sample stuff for these guys. We can. This is this gets tricky because again, you don't have it's a good field, not a great field. You're still going to have some small sample Blades Brown and companies in the field here. Last 12 months, worst player in the field is your defending champ, Peter Monali at 43.6% greens and reg from the rough.
And another angle you could take, so I was going to say is, again, you could, since we are trying to recreate conditions, is go to the filters and put it on thick rough, because obviously this is taking in all types of rough, could be 2-inch rough, in the Bermuda Championship as well. So, we want to, rough is thick, who's able to hit, greens from thick rough. So there's so many different ways you could kind of look at it, but I think that kind of matters too.
Yep, that's a good call. All right, let's we'll go through. We got some thick rough. Again, some of these other guys are gonna have some real small samples, but again, you can mess around with your sample size. So rough, long rough, greens in reg. Small samples for everyone. Fishburne. You see Keith Mitchell's been decent, but again, these are real small round samples. Let's see if we can get some of the better guys that play harder courses more frequently, and Adam Scott is popping here. Sometimes it's good to in this process here on a Monday too, where we're not necessarily adding it and building a model, but you can start to think about what you want to add to a model and go through it here and get a sense of some names that are maybe popping in your head, maybe confirmation bias or guys you want to rule out. Again, you can mess around here with the sample size. Again, we're looking at this through 12 months. If you want to back way out to 5 years, you can. I wouldn't suggest it necessarily, but we can
put it to 3 years real quick. Let's see, because I do think hitting from the rough is more of a kind of a skill as far as what kind of strength you have, what's your club head speed. So I think that might be, for me, it's a little more sticky at least. But I always like to, like you do, start small and then kind of back out and see what changes and what guys kind of pop to the top more. So
I went 3 years. 24 round minimum. We're looking at approach proximity or greens and reg from long rough. You see here, it's at the top. Yeah, that's the top, right? All right. Johnny Vegas, had under 60%. Adam Scott right there as well. Will Gordon, Nate Lashley, Joseph Bramlett, Chris Gotterup, Sam Stevens, Lanto Griffin. Again, but has played well here in the past. Keith Mitchell, Alex Smalley. Again, just Smalley's playing really good golf. I mean, Smalley cashing finishing position bets makes a ton of sense. He's some guy. He just seems to, winning golf tournaments is hard. We've seen with Tommy Fleetwood 14-1 and has not won a PGA Tour event in his lifetime. And I think consensus top 20 golf in the world. It's a skill. It's hard to do. But Smalley's gonna keep putting himself in position with ball striking like this. Is maybe an alt field event or something like that. It'll close eventually. Kevin Yu, Luke List, Nicola Højgaard, Vincent Welly. So, very, very tricky. You're not seeing many guys above 55% here in these conditions over, again, a large sample. It's tough. None of the favorites, which is interesting to see here. Bottom of the board when we look this way. Canadians don't like the thick rough. You got Willett here, then Hughes and Hadwin, Webb Simpson, Bryce Garnett, Eric Cole, Zach Johnson, Thorbjorn Olsen, Ben Cole.
And it does, like, a lot of these guys are smaller, and then when you go to the guys who are leading, you have some big, stronger guys. Vegas, Gotterup, Bramlett's up there. So, yeah, I think some of those guys may be, interesting. But then again, Peter Malnati's one of the smallest guys on tour, and but again, keep your ball in the fairway. You don't have to deal with the rough. So there's different ways of looking at it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Malnati thing is just, it is what it is. You just chalk it up to like a single year variance. The guy just got hot for 4 days. Like, right. That happens. Just, it was statistical anomaly. You're not going to find anything probably pre or post that led to that. We definitely have not seen anything post Valspar would make you think that Peter Malnati is going to put himself in a position to do it again. But that's, again, the nature of this event, in my opinion. There's just significantly more variance than your standard event because of the unique layouts, the wind, how this golf course plays. There's just a lot of variance. So the question in the chat to Matt, like, does anything pop for Mateo Maricero? We can look at that here in a minute. But like, whatever, you got 44, you got a 400 to 1. He's now 200 to 1. Yes. Like, right. If you have an instinct on a guy, you saw anything form wise that makes you feel good about it. This is that type of event where I feel like, there's just a lot of variables that can come into play, and, picking off really good numbers, you get yourself on the right side of the weather. However that plays itself out. Rich asking that. We touch on the top. Again, we're a couple days out, but yes, it looks like there's probably leaning to a wind wave advantage. So I personally, who typically by the time we hop on here on a Monday, have maybe even finished my card, I am holding out until we get a better sense of if that wave advantage is true, and then who is on the right or wrong side of it. So definitely one of those weeks where I think you're better off doing that. Again, another spot too, historically, in previous notes from years past, good live events because of these, variables. It's a spot where maybe I come in softer pre-flop and then, save a little bit of money to kind of see how it's playing, see who's playing well, and maybe, kind of approach it that way. So, all right, long rough, I think matters a lot. What else do you want to look at here? So maybe some longer approach shots. You want to look at par 3 scoring. How do you want to capture some of that stuff?
Yeah, I think both of those are key. Overall approach, which again is going to capture rough and fairway combined. So, we have it in 50-yard buckets. So definitely, 53% of approaches coming from 175 plus. So, I think, if you wanted to go by 25-yard buckets, I'd definitely start at 175 to 200 and look up. But yeah, definitely long irons, middle irons. Probably the most important thing this week overall, if you're kind of narrowing it down to one stat, is your ability to control your ball into these firm greens, and I guess we'll see how that plays out as the week goes. Yeah, that's definitely a big thing, and you can kind of the whole par 3 scoring relates to that as well. So you're kind of getting those same numbers.
Yeah, let's see where are we from 150 to 175, just from a overall distribution. It's not quite, because I know most of it's 175 plus. Okay, so we're it's not nothing, right? Like, yes, it's a little less than tour average, but again, you're going to find yourself there a little bit, and then you see 175 to 200 is where you start to see the spike. So when you're looking at the overalls, I'm not. I think it's okay. I'm not throwing out the 150 to 200. I want to kind of look at all these here, so we can look at from a proximity standpoint. That can matter. And then, like I said, five long par 3s where you're 190 plus for all of them. Just those are kind of hold on holes in a way. Your best in the field. We had a no-name gentleman with 2 rounds played. We'll look at that bug. See who that guy is. 2 rounds over the last year. Give no respect for this poor gentleman. Joel Damon. And again, we kind of want, this is obviously color coded based off of the average. So we want to see some bright green here across the board. See Kitayama as well. Longer approach shots. I know he's been multiple Betsperts golf subscribers who've been on the wrong side of Kurt Kitayama bets as of late, whether it's matchups or some spots where he felt like he had an edge. He might come back and bite some of us again this week. Lucas Glover played really good golf for 4 rounds, basically at the Players. Couldn't get it done, but this is a spot that seems to fit Lucas Glover these days. You can see his approach proximity on 250 plus is good to get as well. I can see that for all these guys. Kevin Yu, Straka's in here for the most part. Rico Hoey. You got Sam Ryder. Koala Carl likes the small stuff, gets a little bit more dicey as you get longer, but there's a small sample on him as well. Again, here's Hovland. This is not the problem for Hovland. This is where he still does his best work. The rest of it is really tough. I just have such a hard time looking at Hovland at 55 and just skipping it. But right now he seems just completely lost. So even a loyal Hovland backer like myself is going to have to give him some time here. Maybe he's a live ad if he's showing a pulse. Doug Gim, Mac Mesner, Matt McCarty showed up a little bit this weekend. See Horsey Sauce in here, getting it done on a decently small sample. Here you go. Mateo Minicero, Matt, 150 to 200 plus. Been pretty dialed in. Not a great sample, but here you go. Some encouraging stuff. It seems to be a better shorter iron wedge player, 100 to 150, 150 to 200 versus the longer stuff. But hey, 400 to 1, as Kevin in the office said, you got to take those odds anytime someone gives it to you. So anyone jump out to you, Ron? We're seeing some guys that we've seen in some other stuff as well.
Yeah, there's, a lot of these guys, the more I see of Zalatoris, the more, I think, it's just that, what was it, the back nine? I forget what day it was. He just completely fell apart.
Saturday's back nine.
But yeah, I was like, when he was sitting there at 11 under, I was instantly regretting not betting him last week. So, a good bounce back spot for him this week for sure. But yeah, this is something that I'm definitely including in my model. And, I think, the par 3 scoring kind of, directly relates, like I said, to, these same, ranges they're going to be hitting from. So, and again, I think this, the par 3 is long here, but they're also in the top 10 most difficult. So, I think, different ways to kind of manipulate the data, if you, could go to difficult scoring and just look at par 3s on difficult courses. But yeah, and we have this filter as well. So yeah, I forgot about it. We have the direct one. So yeah, I'm definitely building this, and probably with 5 holes. Very rare you see that on the PGA Tour. But this is going to be a huge part of my process this week.
Yep. And again, these are, in my opinion, and you can tell me how you want to approach it. Maybe it's different through the lens of DFS this week, because you still want scoring opportunities, you want birdies and stuff, but like these are hold on holes, right? These are not necessarily scoring holes. So I'd rather look at average this week versus birdie or better percentage, because birdie's a bonus. I just want you trying to not make a 4 as often as possible. So small sample for guys. Let's kick this out here. We can see if we can get, maybe it's not a view and filter combination that we use often. So to kind of play around with the sample to see if we can get some of our better guys. But again, we're seeing a decent sample for most of the top of the field. So you can see Vince Whaley here, Olsen again, Ben Martin, Xander. And again, this is par 3 scoring difficult last 12 months through the lens of our par 3 efficiency metric. Zach Johnson, Corey Connors, hey, Mateo Minicero again. All right, Ben Griffin, Akshay, EVR, Skins, Luke List, Joel Highsmith, Brian Campbell. So these are the guys that are at or under par for the most part. There's Zalatoris not too far behind. Kitayama again, Horschel again. Let's look at the opposite. I like to see guys that maybe can just kind of cross out. Webb Simpson, Johnny Vegas, Mark Hubbard, Sneds. Spieth has not particularly fared well on these difficult par 3s. Putnam, Hall, Svensson, Jesper Svensson. Let's see, Peter Malnati. Interesting. Did not expect that. Let's see, Cam Young. Joel Damon's had some stuff that's gone well for him. This is not one of those things. Michael Kim, Ayers Hovland again. All right. So yeah, I definitely think it's something that's unique that we don't look at often, but I do think it matters here because they are so difficult, so long, and there are 5 of them because it is a unique layout this week. So definitely something to factor in. All right, anything else before we wrap for the people?
Yeah, one last thing, I think, whether we look at it or not right now, but I think scrambling from the rough, when they increased the rough and again brought it closer to the green surfaces 2 years ago, we saw scrambling go from 67% all the way down to below 60%. So right around 59% the last 2 years. So that's definitely, kind of one of the things that is keeping scoring so difficult here. So again, this thick rough around the greens definitely has had an impact. So um, definitely around the green, biggest thing is using the filter we have to look at specifically scrambling from the rough when it is difficult. I think that's another kind of my big around the green stat for this week.
I like it. Yeah, because you can also do that. I like this too, where it's just it can be it's also long, and then looking at like rough length, long, and then around the green proximity. Because I think to me this is where the stuff gets tricky. Because scrambling is going to account for putting still, whereas are you giving yourself makeable putts without capturing the putting data? So looking at long rough, in approach proximity or strokes gained around the green through long rough or through as Ron said here, when you see here scrambling rough, difficult. That makes a little bit more sense. So let's see. We got both of these on. Let's see what's giving us for data. I think it's kind of a unique thing we don't look at every week, so we can see if we get a sample that's worthwhile. These are typically going to be more difficult golf courses. I think again, this is probably a skill that's more of baseline sticky skill. So I don't mind having a little bit larger time frame to see if we can get some worthwhile data here. Novak seems to perform very well here. You can see Olsen again, JT, Cam Davis, Michael Kim, Vincent Norman, Christian Lawrence, Cole, Scott. Let's look here at around the green proximity through this. Zane Hoot, again, Kevin Yu, Novak again, Benny On, Harry Hall, Eric Cole. There's good news for Zalatoris backers. Kurt Kitayama, Cam Davis again. So again, and then some more at the top of the board stuff, and then you go scrambling rough. Ron. You can see top of the board. Will Zalatoris. There's Andrew Novak again. Vincent Norman, Cam Davis, Andrew Putnam, Corey Connors. So yeah, interesting. I think that this stuff matters this week. I think kind of showing different ways to use the rabbit hole to get to the end. That is something that I think that makes a lot of sense. I like it quite a bit. Rich wants to know, is Ben Griffin in play this week? Ben Griffin's, he's like, I don't know, is he Sanjay M? Dude, just Michael Kim, Ben Griffin, just these guys need to take a week off. They are playing all the time.
You got to give it to Ben Griffin. He's desperately trying to get into the Masters. So some of these guys just keep playing. But look, Ben Griffin missed the cut last week, so he had a couple of extra days to rest. So I'm not completely off him, but I think this is a decent course for him. But yeah, I don't know. It's like 12 weeks in a row for him. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll give you these guys. I mean, I go get it. I mean, you can see Augusta at the end of the tunnel. Like, chase that dragon for sure.
Go to his
go
to his player page really quick, and I just want to see if he's like decreasing like rapidly, or if he's kind of I know obviously missed the cut last week, but he was playing from pretty decent golf before then.
Yeah, let's just see from a high level in terms of what we would expect for him on this golf course, just to get a sense of if it would be a good fit. We got Poetry of Greens, so that's fared well for him. Scoring conditions, not quite where we want Ben Griffin, right? We typically, it seems like we want him here in easy, very easy versus difficult, very difficult. Field's probably middle of the pack. This is, small sample here. Oh, very long golf course, 21 round sample. Not particularly great. I can see longer irons are good. So that fares well for him there. Just in terms of where his rolling averages are, you can see a little bit of a slide ball striking wise. So that's not fantastic per se. So maybe there's a little bit of slide back. It performed pretty poorly here. The players not great at API. And again, very unique and difficult test there as well. This feels, I guess, more cognizant than it would for some of the others, but feeling like we're
those last 2 weeks have been pretty bad though. When you look at the ball striking starting to slip. So
yeah, that's not good. Made the cut here. So this is 4 rounds of losing almost 2 strokes of the field ball striking. So that's tough. So wouldn't be a week for me for Ben Griffin, but at least not to win. But wish him the best in his journey to pursue an invite to the Masters, because I'd be sick. You forget these are human beings. Not all these guys are assured to go there every year. It's really good golfers that, again, I read up a pretty big Masters thing every year before we started, and you see these big gaps between guys going and not going. So it's, you get the bottom, especially the bottom third of that field every year is flipping over all the time. So it's, chasing that when it's close makes a ton of sense to me. So, all right, everyone, be ready to check out Ron's preview over at Betsperts Golf for the Valspar. I'll have my preview and betting picks again, probably a little later. Sometimes that's a Monday afternoon thing. But again, I will likely not make a bet before that. So probably hold off. But definitely going through the process here this morning with Ron. Feel like I have a couple of highlighted names, both at the top, in the middle, and maybe down in the Peter Malati range where you maybe want to take some swings here this week. So again, subscribe here to the YouTube channel, Betsperts Golf, where you listen to podcasts. Get yourself over the rabbit hole. Again, you get a month right now. You're going to get yourself some pretty good Masters information there as well. So again, rounding out here the Florida swing this week. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today, and we'll see you all again very, very soon, as in tomorrow.